Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of interesting things happening in the world. So Trump fires the statistician who gave him jobs report numbers that he was not too happy about. So we'll talk about those numbers and also the fallout from that firing. Trump is also contemplating a Ghislaine Maxwell pardon. And she has been moved to a cushy club fed in Saagar's hometown, actually.
That's right.
So
town that I was born in.
He's got all the lowdown on that one.
I'll try to get some inside scoop on her and Elizabeth Holmes' relationship. All right, I'll try to report back.
In addition, a bunch of updates with regard to Israel, but we had Mike Huckabee, Steve Witkoff, and Mike Johnson all visiting Israel, so we have some updates there. They are issuing an ultimatum to Hamas as the starvation continues. TikTok is installing a former IDF censor on their platform as the all-out assault on campus free speech continues from the Trump administration. Tim Dillon making some pretty, I would say, very incisive comments about Barry Weiss's free press and the reason that she is garnering the valuation for her company that she has been able to
$250
obtain.
million.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a lot to say about that one, having a little bit of knowledge about media companies and what their actual value is, so we'll dig into that. And we also have a fantastic guest, Jasper Nathaniel, who has been relentlessly focusing on what is going on in the West Bank, of course, while all of our eyes have been on Gaza, understandably. The project of annexation, he says, in the West Bank, it's basically complete. And you'll recall this was a key campaign promise from Trump directly to Miriam Adelson, who gave him $100 million, and they are making good on that pledge to her. So a lot to get to there. But we also considered just blowing out the whole show so Saagar could express his extreme disgust for 2 hours at the Rose Garden.
I wanted
the potential
in
the gilded ballroom also that's being
I
installed.
desperately wanted to go off, but one day perhaps that I will. I'll have a guest on from the White House Historical Association or something. These are things that absolutely zero other people care about, but are deep
sure
to
you're
my
right
heart.
about that.
I hope so. Listen, I would hope that Americans have a veneration for aesthetics, for history, for the way that our White House should look to the world, and to not turn it into a Mar-a-Lago or Saudi Arabian style estate. But I don't know. I've started to give up in terms of that. But perhaps you're right. Perhaps you're right.
The
Maybe we can negatively.
The Rose Garden is just like. It just is grotesque.
Maybe we can negatively polarize liberals into caring about some of these things because they hate Trump. I'm fine. It's a big tent.
Happening.
It's a big tent, and I'm welcome anybody else in there. Before we get to that, we do have the show available on Facebook now. Apparently, that was something some people are asking, so we've got links down in the description. You want to share it there on Facebook. If you're active on the platform, go for it. It is available there. And before, as well, we have the show, of course, breakingpoints.com, where you can support us monthly and yearly memberships. It has been tremendously helpful. You guys saw our interview with Alyssa Slotkin, massively viral. It's one of the most viral things that we've done in quite some time. Our interview, just followed later on by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the whistleblower, the former Green Beret, Anthony Aguilar. Similarly, I've received a ton of feedback, and just inbound in terms of people who have had that. So our ability to do these newsmaking interviews is entirely propped up because of our premium members. So breakingpoints.com if you are able to help us out. If you can't do that, no worries. Just remember, subscribe to this YouTube video, and or if you listen to a podcast, take a favorite episode, send it to a friend. It's tremendously helpful to us. With that, let's start with the economy, as Krystal said. So Donald Trump, the president, has now fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Go ahead and put this up there on the screen, removing the official, quote, overseeing jobs data after a dismal employment report. So you may ask, what the hell is going on here? And so all of it stems back to a report on Friday after a new BLS report on jobs, which showed some precarity in the U.S. economy, as well as some previous revisions. And so this is a big question. It showed just 73,000 jobs added last month, 258,000 fewer jobs were created in May and June than had previously been estimated. Quote, the report then suggested the economy had sharply weakened during Trump's tenure, a pattern consistent slowdown with economic growth during the first half of the year and an increase in inflation during June that appeared to reflect the price pressures created by the president's tariffs. So who was this person? She was nominated by Biden in 2023, became the commissioner of the BLS in 2024, January of 2024. They usually serve 4-year terms. The Senate confirmed her 86-8. J.D. Vance did vote yes, in case anybody is wondering. Much of this is about these revisions. And, just to explain a little bit behind this, because I think it's actually fair for people to be like, how does this all happen? The BLS the census and all of this, they're not the most efficient agencies. And in some ways, it's almost difficult to blame them. You are trying to get a full survey of the US economy using statistical sampling and all of these very outmoded ways. Now, the census in particular is the most outmoded because it's constitutionally mandated the way that they do it. And in fact, there was an effort to revitalize and change the way that the BLS conducts its employment data. Would anyone like to tell me what happened to that agency in that effort? Oh, right, it was fired by Howard Lutnick in his first week while he was in office. And so that's what happened over at the BLS. Just in case anybody's wondering, the ability to actually modernize the data was doged within the first week of the Trump administration.
Very efficient. Way to go, guys.
Yes, very efficient. So that now we have inefficient data. But people are like, how does this continue happening? And again, it's largely because the snapshot that they get after that month, after more accurate payroll data and other comes in, causes revisions. This happened during the Biden administration. It's now happened during the Trump administration. The wild swings are actually more reflective of the wild and changer nature of our economy.
Yeah.
I'm not defending the numbers themselves. I agree. It's ridiculous that we don't necessarily have such a quick snapshot. At the same time, it's, 330 million people, 50 different states. It's the biggest economy in the history of the world. It's not Liechtenstein. It's not so easy to just be like, oh, how much money did we make today or something. Right? So this is a very inefficient system, but part of the thing is, and it has bedeviled presidents since all time, but I am laying it out, I'm trying to, as fairly as possible, to say the revisions themselves, while wild and crazy, are not necessarily inconsistent with the wild and changing nature of all of our economic policy over the last 2 years.
If I could build on that. So in addition, in the same way that there is a lower response rate to polls, making it more difficult to poll, what they rely upon for the core of the data that they collect to compile these jobs numbers is surveys that go out to businesses and also, public institutions, et cetera. And so the response rate has gotten lower over time. And, so initially when they report those numbers out, it's not like they've gotten all of their survey data back. So revisions, they always do revisions. That's nothing new. The extent, the size of these revisions is no doubt notable. And I think the things that I saw pointed to are, number one, this is just sort of like, the quality of the data is degrading over time. That's number one. Number two, as Saagar was pointing out, a lot of actually the later survey results to come in were from public sector institutions, and they had taken a job hit because of DOGE and because of all the cuts in government spending, et cetera. So that may have added to it. And then number three, just the fact that the economy is so topsy-turvy right now. All of the late survey data that came in after the original numbers all pointed in a more negative direction, whereas typically it'll be sort of mixed, what's coming in after the fact, some of it will be more up, some of it will be more down, so more or less even out. So that's from my understanding of reading into it why there was such a significant revision on these particular jobs numbers. And I mean, it does just kind of make a logical sense when you think of how all over the place Trump has been with the tariff policy in particular, that would make it more difficult to be able to ascertain exactly what the impacts are and why businesses would perhaps drag their feet in sending in their own information to the government.
See, I feel foolish, Krystal, because we were selected as part of the business survey, and I completed it promptly, even though it was a pain in the ass.
Were we really? I didn't know that.
That's right. I told you that. Yeah,
Oh,
we were part of the. I think we were part of the annual survey, and it was honestly a huge pain. So I understand why business owners out there don't want to do it. But thank you for podcast representation to the United States government.
There we go.
For including breaking points in your survey. But with all of that being said, here is Donald Trump for his explanation for why he wanted to fire the BLS. Let's take a listen.
Why did you fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Because I think her numbers were wrong, just like I thought her numbers were wrong before the election.
On the monthly jobs report, going forward, why should anyone trust the numbers?
Well, that's
and
the
if
big thing. You're right. No, you're right. Why should anybody trust numbers? You go back to election day. Look what happened 2 or 3 days before with massive, wonderful job numbers, trying to get him elected or her elected, trying to get whoever the hell was running. Because you go back and they came out with numbers that were very favorable to Kamala, okay? To trying to get him elected, trying to get her elected. And then on the 15th of November or thereabouts, they had an 800,000 or 900,000 overstatement reduction right after the election. It didn't work because you know who won, John? I won.
So that's what the new Trump administration line here is. Here's White House Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett kind of talking more about that 800,000 revision that came after Joe Biden withdrew from the race, but it was before the election, actually. Let's take a listen.
There was a 818,000 revision, making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse, that came out after he withdrew from the presidential campaign. There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder, and I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
So again, I mean, much of this, you laid it all out.
Yeah.
It's also apparently COVID destroyed the response record and all this. I don't want to sit here and defend BLS or any of this data. CPI data, all of it, it is very spotty. People have accurately criticized it for years, but it's kind of what we have. And so from that, of course, it has tremendous impact on the overall U.S. economy projections for business investment, for the Federal Reserve, for the way, of course, that people make, investment decisions, the S&P 500 stock market. The stock market, by the way, reacted terribly to those jobs numbers, possibly why you see why President Trump fired that person. But let's go and put this up there on the screen and just shows here the actual revision for where it looked from the original numbers and where they came down to. Now, obviously, if you're the president and let's say in April, you have a pretty decent number, as you can see there, over 100,000, and then you see a revision down dramatically after so-called Liberation Day, may not be so good for you, actually. And in fact, those 2 months after Liberation Day, which were the most volatile during tariffs, of course, now show a revision dramatically down, and even a modest increase from that point forward is probably more because of the pause that we saw in the majority of the tariff policy. Of course, August 1st, just a couple of days ago, a number of other tariffs did go into effect. It is remaining unclear. But the point actually that I want to make is that beneath the surface, this was all happening no matter what's going on with all of the BLS. There's all kinds of other data out there. It's also hilarious to me watching Republicans be like, see, the GDP numbers are good. I'm like, hey, the GDP numbers were good under Biden. Does anybody think the economy was good?
Right.
We're talking about the S&P 500. The S&P was at an all-time high as of a couple of days ago. And, the S&P had 2 record years under Biden. Did the economy get better under Biden?
Right.
No. I mean, I think, and this is where the disconnect between everyday living conditions, we're going to do this in a little bit, we're going to talk about poor job growth and others that come to the so-called blockbuster parts of the economy. And one of the major insights is that AI spending in particular is responsible for so much of our current GDP growth. But that, again, is not the U.S. economy. That's not manufacturing. That is not jobs or people who are working at lower wages. That has no impact whatsoever on your ability to purchase a house. There's a big chart going viral right now on the right about, the average 30-year-old and the ability to buy a house and all of that. It still remains one of the most fundamental questions, really, of our time. But the point is...
Not only on the right, that's going viral, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
It's very much in my timeline as
I
well.
want it to go everywhere.
Yeah.
Everyone should be aware of it. Everyone should say, hey, what the hell is going on here? I was actually just looking at a current forecast, even with all of this too late Powell stuff, even with the Federal Reserve cut, the forecast for a 2025 interest rate is like 6.25%. That's still double what it was just 5 years ago. Are we ever going back to 3? Probably not. But, 4 or 5 would be nice. Certainly can save people thousands and thousands of dollars whenever they're trying to do that. So you can just look at the carrying cost, the purchasing price. Home prices still remain very, very high. Market is a disaster. Interest rates and all of that are a problem. That's the numbers, to me, that matter, as long with wage growth. The S&P doesn't matter at all. I mean, at least for these purposes of analyzing how people feel about the economy.
Well, and let's just stick on the firing of the BLS commissioner. It's deeply disturbing. Obviously, they had no issue with this lady when the jobs numbers that were coming out, they thought benefited them. And in fact, part of why Trump was so hard hit by these revisions is because, first of all, it really does complete the picture. I mean, there was a lot of weirdness in the economy of consumer debt levels are at an all-time high, inflation ticking up, you see consumer confidence is quite low, you see all these negative signs. But then the jobs numbers are hanging in there. It's how is that happening? And now it's okay, now it kind of all makes sense. Yes, the economy is just as bad as people feel that it is. This fills in the blanks. So prior to this moment, when these negative jobs numbers comes out, Trump had no issue with her. So, I mean, it just is really clear he didn't like the numbers, so he's firing the lady who put out the numbers. Now, just so people understand, and maybe this is a little comforting, he makes it seem like she just gets out like a pen and pad and is like, here you go, this is what no, she actually doesn't even know what they are.
Yes.
Before the announcement happens. Yeah. Now there are, and it's not like just a 1+1, there's all sorts of statistical modeling and analysis that goes into this. And what I was reading is that, you know, there are all these little micro decisions that you could sort of push in one way or the other that over time could influence the job numbers one way or another. So the next person that they put in, who was this lady's deputy, by the way, so this is another like career official. This is not someone who, you know, didn't like put Janine Pirro in there or something like that. She's busy now. She's been confirmed for her other job. But in any case, this is a, you know, career statistician, another like longtime career bureaucrat who's been put into this position. But if you're her or him, I'm not sure, male or female, if you're anyone else throughout the government, you've got this in your head now. Like, if I give the president some news that he doesn't like, my ass is grass. Like, I'm going to get fired. So does that impact the way that you go about your job? Does it impact those little micro decisions that get made about how the statistical model is created? I think that the comment Trump made there where he said, why should anyone trust numbers, was very revealing. And, you know, I mean, it harkens back to Stop the Steal. It harkens back to his fundamental ability and desire to reshape reality to his liking and to destabilize reality. I mean, it really is a very postmodernist presidency where it's like, what even are facts and reality? And so this is just sort of the logical endpoint of a man and an ideology that really doesn't actually care about what the facts and the reality are. He cares about what's going to serve his personal interests at any given time. So, you know, this is sort of like a classic, I guess, like cult leader technique or tactic. The more that you can just sort of create and assert your own reality, obviously, the more power you're going to have over your followers and the people that believe you. So, you know, I think it's also significant in terms of Trump's psychology and the way that he approaches power.
And we have a supercut here of Trump previously talking about how much he liked the BLS numbers. Let's take a listen.
The numbers were much better, as you know, than projected by the media. In 3 months, we have created 350,000 jobs. Think of that. A lot of jobs are being created. That's what happened this morning.
That was before the revisions.
There you go.
But now, let's go and put the next one up there on the screen, A6. Journal actually did a very good job here. And I'll just read directly from them. Job market data gets revised every month, but rarely are the revisions as negative as the ones in Friday. Now, what they say is that the last time there was such a large revision to the change over employment was in April of 2020, the height of the pandemic. Quote, worryingly, revisions have been consistently negative in 2025. The Labor Department now lowering its initially reported job count every month through June. So what happened? Monthly payroll came from the Labor Department's BLS statistics. The BLS has a voluntary monthly survey of 121,000 businesses and government agencies that employ 26% of all non-farm employees. It extrapolates the responses to produce estimates for the whole workforce. In a typical month, they will hear back from 60%. However, an economist said that the collection rate in June was just 59.5%, so that's part of the problem. Government agencies were then overrepresented amongst U.S. payrolls to the BLS establishment survey. Then the revision to May and June were due to public schools, which employed some 110,000 fewer people in June than BLS believed at the time. But, quote, the late responses from other industries all skewed negative. After incorporation of all of these weaker numbers, weakness was then spread back through May due to a statistical methodology called concurrent seasonal adjustment. And most of the revision in May is due to the, quote, routine recalculation of seasonal factors. Again, I do not want to cape for this insane system. I am just telling you that is the way it has always worked, and you should always, of course, believe, take some grain of salt for any of these things, because snapshot statistics are always wildly inaccurate, or at least in my opinion, from the overall economy. Even the GDP numbers, you really have to dig deep on them, and they get revised all the time as well. Last part here, let's put this up there on the screen. This was an interesting statement from the previous commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who actually was nominated and served under Donald Trump in 2017. He says, quote, "Today, President Trump called into question the integrity of the employment situation report that the BLS released. He accused the commissioner of deliberately reporting false numbers to reflect poorly on the administration. Quote, this baseless, damaging claim undermines the valuable work and dedication of BLS staff who produce the reports each month. This escalates the unprecedented attack on the independence and integrity of the federal statistical system. The president seeks to blame someone else for unwelcome economic news. The commissioner does not determine what the numbers are, but simply reports what the data shows. The process of obtaining them is decentralized by design to avoid opportunities for interference, and they use the same proven, transparent, reliable process to produce estimates every month. Every month, the BLS revises prior 2 months' employment estimates to reflect slower arriving, more accurate information." So that's what we have from somebody who was literally nominated and worked from Trump previously. By the way, can I just say this? Mr. Lutnick, please undoge the commission to modernize the BLS statistics, and let's do that. Except the problem is now you're going to be tainted by the fact that they fired the current BLS commissioner.
Yeah.
And then the business community and others are going to say, I'm not so sure about this. You know, who really knows what the numbers are? And in fact, perhaps that's part of by design, is if you have uncertainty within the numbers, then nobody can firmly trade or make decisions based on them. But to be honest, you know, we're more worse off for it because lack of confidence in those numbers. I know this all sounds very squishy, but we are the capital of the global empire, the world's reserve currency, our Federal Reserve, and other. I mean, literally all of our monetary policy decides the fate of the globe. And I don't even think that that's really an exaggeration. Well, that's the type of stuff they make their decisions on. I'm not saying it should work that way, but it does. It has immense impact for our economy, stock market, firing, etc. And so lack of confidence within that, it's just one more step down, in my opinion, in a badder direction. And so with that, I don't know. I don't know how this will work out. Maybe it could be fine, but you know, it doesn't look good.
I mean, it does harken back to, like, you know, the Soviet Union, where it was like they didn't want to convey negative results to the leadership, so they would just make stuff up, and then you're unable to, like, actually, you know, plan. And there was also a sense of like, oh, we're in this competition with the U.S. We don't want to expose any of our dirty laundry, so we want our, like, the public-facing numbers to look really good. And yeah, what happens is then no one can make good decisions, no one can plan. There's no sense of trust in anything that's coming out of the government, and it's not a good place to be. So, you know, this is part and parcel not only with Trump's reality distortion, it's also with the way that he has made the baseline assumption that the government should be a sort of neutral entity. He has thrown that out the window. And that might be one of the most revolutionary things that he has done, and I mean that in a negative way in this context, since coming back into power. And that's not to say that there weren't government agencies that were politicized in the past, but those were considered scandals and one-offs, with the, you know, the assumption that when treating, you know, tax designations and certainly BLS jobs numbers, that these things were being crafted by bureaucrats who were meant to be approaching it in a politically neutral manner. And this will come up again when we do our free speech conversation about the all-out assault on the university system over quote-unquote anti-Semitism. Trump has decided to use all of the federal government as a political weapon and explicitly politicize every single agency as much as he possibly can. And so this also fits in, you know, that direction where he has taken the federal government.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.